everyone. This is Hannah Kavanagh speaking, and welcome to yet another wonderful episode of CUNY Uncut, where we talk about anything and everything, uncensored, unedited, and uncut. Today, I'm here with a good friend of mine. We go pretty way back, like student government days. She's currently a senior at Hunter. Woohoo! Represent. Studying political science as her major, and then triple minoring in Asian American Studies, public policy, and English as well. She's also a Mellon Scholar, as well as one of the first openly queer presidents of Hunter Student Government in recent years, as well as the president of the Queer Student Alliance at Hunter. I'd like to give a warm welcome to Ariana Ahmed. How you doing, Ariana?
I'm so good, and thank you for having me here today,
Oh
Hannah.
no, thank you for being here. I know we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but this has been, guys, you don't even know, this has been like 6 months in the making. I remember we talked about this in August at our fellow friend Dave's going away party, and now we're finally here. So I'm so excited to have you on the show. To talk about LGBTQ plus issues in regards to your own personal life, like how you kind of grew to understand your identity, both in regards to sexuality and gender, how that influences your work both in student government spaces and beyond, and kind of how intersectionality in your cultural background plays a role in all of these things. So first of all, I want to preface it all by saying compet is definitely a thing. You're always assumed to be straight until proven otherwise. So kind of considering the confines of that in our society, like how did you grow to really understand like your sexual orientation and your gender growing up, especially with that lack of visibility?
Well, I think for me, it's a very dynamic experience because as much of a problem compet is, and I often hear from a lot of my queer friends that compet has impacted them or influenced them to act straight or be straight passing or like to remain within the confines of something that they would feel safe in. For me, I think as a masculine presenting lesbian, it has been completely the opposite experience. I have rarely ever had a chance to find that safety because of the way I present myself. I don't really wear a lot of like feminine clothing. I like, a lot of jewelry, like I keep my hair short, stuff like that. I've been called sir a lot of times. Not that I mind, but I feel like for me, compet has expected me to always act in a very aggressive or masculine manner, which is not something that I always want to do. It's just always, it's a part of me. I've grown up to it. But at some point, there's just like trope or stereotype that lesbians are masculine because that's what they want to be. They want to be men, or they want to be this, or they're aggressive, they're loud, they're not approachable, they're not acceptable. Compet for me has worked in that way that I have always been completely disregarded in that way because, the way our society works is that we interact with individuals to a degree of how much we are sort of attracted to them or how much we're kind of like socially acceptable,
right,
or presentable. If you're presentable in a conventional way, you're more easier to digest. I've never been easy to digest. I've always kept my hair short. I've always talked over men. I've always not apologized, even though I've
Let's go.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times that has made it very difficult for me in the long run that I was not adhering to compet at all. I know sometimes people are like, I wish I could have. People come up to me and tell me that I wish I could be as grounded as you are, but I feel like being this grounded takes a lot of like fear and takes a lot of accessibility away from you, accessing kindness from men, accessing being treated like a woman, which I am, accessing like social atmospheres which I'm not welcome in because no one is attracted to me in that sphere or no one really understands me. In that case, I think I've also like made compet one of my, like, I'm lucky to have not experienced it all the way through, but there's other, like, it's a double-edged sword. There's another part of compet that affects masculine presenting women like I do, like I am.
No, that's such an interesting point because I mean, it's the whole idea of like femininity. It's like, it's almost as if like feminine women are the only kind of women that exist that are, so it's important to kind of open those spaces up to, because like any, masculine women or women, like none of this stuff ish even matters, right?
Yeah.
So I think like pointing that out is really important. But I guess another thing that I'm curious about as well is kind of like, I think it varies from background to background culturally. And I mean, granted, like I'm a straight cisgender woman. So I mean, these are just like general observations that I've kind of saw from like my queer friends. But I feel like a lot of times, white American spaces, specifically in New York City, are like way more forgiving of, not forgiving, I shouldn't say that, but way more accepting, I should say, of queer people, of the idea of like embracing your sexuality, embracing gender, that sort of thing. And I know that that's not always the case in a lot of like BIPOC households, especially BIPOC immigrant households. So I was wondering kind of like how your cultural background kind of factors into all of this from an intersectional standpoint.
Of course. I think my South Asian identity, my parents are from Bangladesh. I've lived in India. I've majorly been in the South Asian region, like at least until I was like 14, which is when I moved here when I was 15. And I think going from this collectivist culture to an individualistic culture has been like groundbreaking shift. It has been, I went from not letting anyone know who I was, or like being so terrified of anyone like finding out if I was gay, if I liked girls, to the point where it's honestly the first thing you know about me sometimes. Like, this is Ariana, she's gay. That's how my friends like to like jokingly introduce me sometimes. But going from this shift has been such like a difficult experience to acclimate to, because I understand that in America I am celebrated, if anything. I have made it so, and a lot of like those before me, a lot of like lesbian pioneers, LGBTQ pioneers, Stonewall, Martha V. Johnson, the OG, has made it so that I feel safe telling anyone about my identities, introducing myself as my identities, and to feel grounded within that identity. But it's also taken the fact that culturally, I am from a collectivist culture that I have to be part of a larger society. I have to like assimilate into the larger idea of I am not just my identity, but I am a community member. What can I do for my community? Who am I when I am not individually describing myself and putting myself above others? But that being said, while I do see New York as like a very progressive beacon, as a South Asian queer Bengali woman, also first generation, it really is difficult to find not only community, but spaces that understand how complicated and interweaved and intersectional your identity is. I know we like to say that, of course, most queer identities are intersectional. You're queer, you're part of a community, you might be an immigrant, but progressiveness is very like subjective, I believe, especially in New York City, where I did not really feel sometimes welcome in queer communities that were predominantly white, cis-oriented, or predominantly like gay men. No shade to gay men, but sometimes it is definitely hard to like kind of like feel connected,
Yeah, I think media has a lot to do with it as well, because I really delve into that stuff primarily from like the standpoint of race, but I think since we're talking about intersectionality, it's important to kind of bring that into the conversation. And come to think of it, like the only like South Asian representation that's really out there is like Mindy Kaling and her shows, and that's like a whole other thing, right? But not even like any mention of like the queer South Asian community or anything of that sort. So I think that lack of visibility could also potentially play a role in how people perceive you, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a big component. I'm really big on community and propagating like the South Asian community, putting them up on like these pedestals where people can see them. It's more visible. I've been working with a lot of like South Asian organizations for them to be more inclusive in nature, because it is difficult to teach. It's not difficult. It's just that a lot of Bengali people don't have the tools to understand what homosexuality is in a neutral or even positive context. It's always the westernized version of like, this is a Western import, and this is something that is not this is something that's foreign to South Asia.
Right.
So when you are gay, like me, I've truly been told like it's after you went to America that you turned gay. That's not true. I was watching Glee when I was 9 years old. That's not true.
Yeah.
I often like get this like idea that, you know, queerness is a Western export to South
Interesting.
Asia, and that once you get into contact with this like idea in the Western context, you are turned gay. So I really like sat down with a lot of like my Bengali elders and had to explain that, you know, queerness is not something you can export like, you know, like merchandise.
Right.
It's something that's always existed in Bengali culture as well, which I think I can go into
No,
pre-colonial
absolutely.
in pre-colonial times.
Wait, so I'm wondering what. So are your family or like parents aware of your identity? I guess like how I guess when you're explaining this stuff to them, like the concept of accepting like queerness and kind of establishing safe spaces for queer people. Like how do those conversations usually play out outside from like the Western lens of America turns you gay or
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, I think this goes back to the idea of like a collectivist culture. In Bengali culture, and I think in other cultures too, definitely, we have this thing called an open secret. So it's kind of like something that everyone kind of knows about you, or in your direct community, or in your direct proximity, knows about you, but we will not speak of it next to
Right.
you. We'll speak of it within our own like little circles, make sure it doesn't disperse that much, you know, gossip. But I think my queerness also in my household is an open secret. I think if we're being stereotypical, like I'm easy to clock as someone who is a little bit more mass presenting, someone who likes a lot of like things that boys like, as my mom would say. I still get called a tomboy, you know, and I'm like, yeah, I'm a tomboy. I've been a tomboy since I was born. Yeah, yeah, and I kind of leave it at that with them. I think between us, it's a mutual understanding that they do care about what society says of them, and I think that's pretty common standard with a lot of like South Asian culture, that we kind of like sustain ourselves on this social inclusion and what people say about us, even though it doesn't pay our bills.
Yeah.
Um, and I let them have that because while they are not really the best at accepting what it is, they are also trying their best to understand. And I give them that benefit of the doubt because they have had difficult lives. They're immigrants. They have been they've been working themselves to the bone. Still, when you're constantly working, when you're caring for a family, when you're surviving, it becomes really difficult to understand these theoretical ideas to them of queerness, understanding sitting down and understanding queerness as not only something that you are, but something that you can be, something that your daughter is. So I've been giving them the time and space to understand this practically, bit by bit, by being more comfortable around me, sharing my um, what I like social media, or what I like in popular media, like some of the shows that I watch, you know, watching The Half of It, which is a movie by Alice Wu.
Oh, I've heard of
Yeah,
the half of
yeah,
it.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I watched that with them, and they were like a little confused at first as why I was showing it. But the good thing about that movie is that it's not only a queer movie about two girls, but it features a queer Asian character and her relationship with her immigrant father, which is something they can connect to. So I'm really like appreciative of all these like intersectional movies that are coming out of like the queer media sphere that solely do not only focus on queerness, but how we interact with queerness via our immigration status, how socioeconomic status.
Yeah, and honestly, it's about effing time that those stories are told, honestly. A little late, but better late than never. But I think, yeah, it goes back to the whole idea of like the importance of media and like educating people and informing them of like, different kinds of people that are out there with different experiences. It's like an all-encompassing thing. But one thing I find quite interesting is that, so, I know you were saying how amongst you and your family, it's like an open secret, but you're pretty open about your queerness within an academic setting, through your role as like student president for Hunter USG, that sort of thing. But it was interesting because I was talking to our mutual friend Dave before he went to Oxford for his Rhodes Scholarship. Shout out to Dave, who was also on CUNY Uncut before. But he was telling me that there was instances where he felt like there was a sense of tokenism when he would talk specifically about issues regarding immigration, because he moved to Nepal when he was 7, and there was that whole idea of he's the spokesperson for all immigrants and all like DACA recipients. So I'm wondering if you feel a similar way within the spaces of student government and beyond, like outside of your household, about your queer identity, both on the sexuality front and the gendered front?
Yeah, I have to say I resonate with Dave. As unfortunate it is that but I do resonate with Dave because as someone who has been very out in my workplace settings, in my school settings, I have like often been informally assigned the queer representative, that I would know about this queer thing and I would know about that queer thing, and I would be the one that they come to about a lot of their like personal thoughts as well. I don't mind that at all. I definitely think that I take a lot of like pride, and I feel very like, I don't know the word for it, but I feel really proud about myself that I've made it a safe space for other individuals to confide in me, tell me those things, ask me questions about my queerness to help them figure out their queerness, or if any other resources that I have, because they would rather come to talk to someone like me than go to Google and find a bunch of random sources. I have, I think, nurtured that side of myself for like a very long time, but I've been also recently seeing that it's become that to a point where I feel really deeply for them. And I, in this entangling of these like lives, relying on me to help them all the time, even though there's like, well, there is a difficulty in accessing resources, and especially being open with other people like that, because even though we have like accessible therapy now, it's about a representation factor, that will this person understand my Muslim issues, my South Asian issues, my immigration issues. Therapy can help, but it often takes someone else to understand exactly what you're going through. And in informally taking on these responsibilities, I often feel like I will mess up. I might mess up. I'm not sure if I even have messed up yet, and even if I have,
I don't think you have.
We'll see. Knock on wood. But I often like put myself on this pedestal. Like I put myself on this pedestal sometimes.
But that must be a lot of pressure, though, at the same time, right? To be like, I need to be the spokesperson for all of these issues. And that's like a complicated thing, too, because if there's not a lot of representation out there, it's like, well, someone has to do it. But at the same time, like, there should also be a balance where, do you feel like you're bearing, is it a lot of pressure on your end? Do you feel like you're bearing a lot of the brunt there?
I think it used to be a lot of pressure before. And that was a time where I was very fearful of messing up, how this would kind of represent the South Asian queer community if I said something that was like out of bounds.
Right.
Or if I did something that was not totally accepted or like expected of me. But over time, I have like become kinder to myself in that regard. I have stepped off of some pedestals that I have put myself on.
Right.
And, boundaries, amazing. Discovered them last year.
Get on it. Get on the boundaries, guys.
Yeah, I think that's helped me a lot to understand that I am as human as anyone else. And even though I do have all these titles on my LinkedIn, I'm still allowed to make these mistakes to express the humanity that I have.
Absolutely. And we're still young, too. So I think if there's any great time to make a mistake, I think now is the time to make them. Yeah. But I was wondering, through all these different roles, right? As Hunter USG president, as president of the Queer Student Alliance at Hunter, even through your internships and stuff. I guess what have you been working on anything specific on the LGBTQ plus advocacy front? And if so, tell me more about that.
So I want to say 2 summers ago, time is a very difficult concept for me.
Yeah.
But, since the pandemic. But this was at the peak of the pandemic, I think. I worked with the City Bar Justice Center, which is basically like a nonprofit legal arm of the Asian American bar system. And I worked with their immigrant justice program. And what I wanted to take on during my time there was processing LGBTQ refugees and asylum seekers. One of the biggest tasks that they gave me as an undergrad, and I was really surprised, are you sure you want me to do this? I was like, you sure? I'm an undergrad. I'm like a sophomore at this point,
wow.
A junior. They're like, we trust you enough and you have shown promise. They put me in a case with another practicing lawyer to process this asylum seeker from Guyana.
Wow, that's so cool.
It is cool. I'll call him Peter for confidentiality's sake.
Okay.
But talking to Peter, my job was to kind of brief his case, and so what immigration asks of you when you're a asylum seeker is to prove that you're gay.
prove that you're gay?
To prove that you're gay.
That's crazy.
That is so crazy.
What kind of proof do they even ask? Like, how can you even... I don't even know where to begin. Like,
I worked on his affidavit, which was 45 pages long.
Mm-hmm.
And it required witnesses that people knew he was gay. Witnesses had to be family, like anyone in his direct proximity, his friends, the type of attacks he endured because he was gay that he would not have endured if he wasn't. And in this case, a little bit of a trigger warning, he had like bullet holes in his leg.
Oh my God.
So yeah.
But also, like, why, like, you shouldn't have to prove your identity to anybody. Like, it just is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And also, I don't know. That boggles my mind.
The American immigration system, as antiquated as ever, but I worked on that project with him, and it was such it was an experience, because here I was as a queer lesbian, who was open about my identity. I didn't have much to worry about except maybe being found out. But even then, I knew that there would be like some sort of like safety net for me eventually. And I was looking at Peter, and he did not have any of that. And he was still smiling when he talked to me. He was glad that he was here. He was so happy. And he was glad that someone who was queer was on his case. And he talked about, like, you know, like the type of boys he liked. He's 30, by the way. And I was like, I was really excited to hear him talk about it. But it was a very gratifying. It was a very like symbolic moment for me to like understand exactly what it meant to work in like not only immigration law, but also processing queer immigrants. You know, like, immigration is hard as it is, and then you throw in the component of being queer, that you have to prove that you deserve this asylum, that because you are quite literally endangered, in physical danger from where you're coming from.
No, it's crazy. It really puts a lot of things into perspective as well in regards to privilege and how there's multiple layers to privilege. And I feel like it's such an interesting perspective that you kind of brought forth when you're like, you know, acknowledging kind of the confines of just like homophobic mindsets, like in your family, like in regards to your identity being an open secret amongst people that you love and care about. But at the same time, in New York City, you know, we're in this hyper progressive city. And I mean, honestly, and I hate to even say it, because I think there's you see a lot of like anti-trans bills floating around in Congress, and just like anti-LGBTQ plus bills in general in the US. But it's crazy to think that that's one of the better compared to other countries where, you know, people are literally getting persecuted and killed for their identity. So it really puts things into perspective. Yeah. I think it's just a long way to go in all fronts, but
yeah. And speaking of bills, I think this might also be of interest, but during the pandemic also, I was working with Councilwoman Vanessa Gibson from D19, which is like the Bronx, Parkchester, Morrisiana.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah. Nice.
So one of the biggest things that I worked for on the LGBTQ front was the Walking While Trans Act. It's a very archaic law within basically the NYPD Code of Civil Conduct, that if you were presenting as trans and you were like loitering outside, NYPD had the privilege of going up to you, shaking you down, and seeing if you were basically soliciting.
Oh my God. And this still exists in 2023?
2021, because I did work with her. I did a lot of the research on how many trans individuals, mostly affected people of color and Black trans women, really. And there's a very big concentration of unhoused individuals who have to be on the streets. Like, there's no other option for them. So to be suspected of loitering when you're trying to find shelter is absolutely ridiculous, on top of the safety concern too. But I worked on research with that for like 6 months or so while I was interning for her. And in, I want to say like January 2021, she kind of presented that this is such an archaic law to New York City Council, by the way. And we got it off the books. De Blasio
That's amazing.
Was still there. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
It was really gratifying, because a few weeks after the bill was kind of like pulled back and taken off of the even though they were like arguing like, oh, we don't really enforce it, I'm like, it's not a fact of like enforcing it. It's like, is this so archaic? It was established when Robert F. Wagner didn't want homosexual people on the street because of the World's Fair in Fresh Meadows.
Wow.
Shouldn't still exist. That was 1965.
Yeah,
We are in
that's
2021.
insane.
It's crazy. But we got like a flood of messages from like a lot of trans women and a lot of like individuals who were unhoused, like thanking us because they had been shaken down because of that law. Like whenever they would ask police officers, like, what gives you the right to like see if I'm soliciting on, they would literally pull that one law up.
Wow. Yeah, that's I don't know. It's interesting as well because I think there's a lot of laws that are like brushed under the rug because it's like, oh, you know, it's still technically on paper, but no one really follows this law anymore. But it's like, no, if it's still in the books, it means like they could still use it to their, you know what I mean? So that's great that was scrubbed off the books. But I was going to say, because I know you're in your final semester, a lot of things are culminating. So I'm just wondering, like, I hate to be the one to ask this, because I get the feeling of, like, what next after graduation. I feel that 100%. But, like, what are your plans, I guess, after graduating in regards to LGBTQ plus advocacy? And how do you kind of hope to implement that into the work that you do, regardless of what you end up doing?
Honestly, Hannah, I've been asked this question so many times.
I know,
now
I'm
have an
sorry.
answer for it.
Oh, yay!
I've not worked on an answer for it, so that I can't say I'm not sure yet. I'll get back to you. I now have an elevator pitch for it. So here's my elevator pitch.
Okay, I'm ready.
I'm currently, like, as you mentioned, I'm working with the Mullen Public Humanities Project scholarship, and the research that I'm doing with them is kind of like seeing how immigration laws have been impacted by very biased judges to have homophobia embedded into them, to the point where like we're still kind of like seeing how much of an influence that they've had, because the Immigration Act of 1965, it kind of like said that homosexuals were not allowed to immigrate to the United States, and they would be like, these are some of the things you should look for in them to, like, you know, spot them. And I'm kind of like I want to gauge how that still impacts a lot of the ways that homosexuality is treated within the legal system today. So that's a bulk of my research, what that's on, and kind of like connecting it to like Penal Code 377, which is also like criminalizing homosexuality in the South Asian region. See how that connects. Yeah. But I really wanted to take that research a step further and hopefully pursue it on the basis of like seeing like the 10-15 year impact of like how that has like impacted a lot of marginalized queer people today. Like, do they still feel the remnants of those laws, especially in terms of like the Penal Code, which was like repealed in 2017, not too long ago. But the second thing I really wanted to focus was like I've been really into constitutional law, and
cool. Okay.
I do want to thank my professor Glenn McPonte. He's
shout out.
He's a civil rights lawyer. He's a professor at Hunter who teaches Asian American queerness, and he is also my biggest supporter from, I want to say, all of the faculty. He's encouraged me to go like to all these lengths on my queerness, to broadcast myself, to like be a big proponent of this. And I really wanted to follow in his footsteps and go to law school, of course, and pursue like immigration law and in relation to like understanding LGBTQ laws and civil rights laws, and see what I can do with that. Hopefully good things.
Oh my god, that's so exciting. Well, I have no doubt you're gonna freaking slay anything that you do.
Right.
So yeah, I'm excited to see what else you do after you graduate. That's incredible stuff in the works. But listen, I could talk with you about this forever, but we gotta wrap up. But I just want to say, Ariana, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show, and thank you for coming on CUNY Uncut. This has been like a long time in the making, and I'm glad we can make it happen.
Thank you, Hannah, for having me here, for letting me tell my story, and for being such a good friend to me.
Oh! Well, this is CUNY Uncut, where we talk about anything and everything. Uncensored, unedited, and uncut. Thank you for tuning in. Bye, everybody.